as the Senate turns to the economic stimulus bill, I believe there is a message coming to the Senate from Oregon and every corner of our country. That message is that Americans don't want a bailout, they don't want a handout, but they do want an economic stimulus bill that is a path out of these very difficult economic times. I believe that working together this week, Democrats and Republicans can come together and start building that path. I would especially like to stress that I'm interested in working with colleagues on the other side of the aisle on this critical issue. I serve on the Senate Finance Committee led by Chairman Baucus, and one of the best additions to this legislation is the relief that the bill provides from the crushing alternative minimum tax. This is the killer tax for middle-class folks. It is something, in my view, that we ought to get rid of permanently. I've actually proposed that, but as a result of bipartisan work in the Senate Finance Committee, there is going to be relief in this legislation for hard-hit middle-class families. On the infrastructure issue, there has also been important bipartisan work. Member of the Senate Republican leadership, Senator Thune of South Dakota, has worked with me on an effort that we would propose to let Build America bonds. We use a tax credit approach to be able to wring more value out of every single dollar that is available for infrastructure. I believe there are other ideas that we are going to focus on here on the floor of the United States Senate that will bring Democrats and Republicans together. A number of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have stressed the idea of broadening the break for homeowners to make sure that people trying to purchase a home would get additional relief. And I'm very pleased that colleagues on both sides of the aisle have come together to work on those kinds of ideas. For this week, I think there are a couple of key principles that we ought to focus on. One that I feel especially strongly about is rewarding success. Instead of subsidizing failure, this legislation takes an approach that in fact rewards success. A prime example is the extension for 3 years of the Renewable Energy Production Tax Credit. To get this tax credit, energy companies actually have to produce energy. Americans would get something back for their hard-earned money. That's the kind of accountability that I think the American people have a right to expect. I think the legislation rewards enterprise, and I'm very pleased about the provisions that provide additional write-offs for small businesses investing in plant and equipment. And as Chairman Baucus noted, there are incentives particularly for small business under Section 179. And what it really comes down to, Madam President, is providing relief for middle-class folks so they can get assistance during these difficult times. For example, there's been discussion of the health information technology issue. Well, the reason that middle-class folks can't get ahead is that medical costs gobble up all their paychecks. One of the reasons that we are seeing these medical costs skyrocket so is that there are so many errors in health care, errors and inefficiencies, duplicative tests that are provided. And it seems to me by investing in health information technology, you make a down payment on a long-term strategy for holding down medical costs, and that is so extraordinarily important to middle-class folks. So, Madam President, we're going to be talking about this more. I note the presence of the distinguished chairman of the Appropriations Committee. One of the reasons I'm confident that we can approach this issue in a bipartisan way is that's the way the distinguished chairman of the Appropriations Committee has always worked. That's been the case with Senator Cochran, Chairman Baucus, Senator Grassley, and we are open to the best possible ideas, Madam President. That is why President Obama, to his credit, has been reaching out, as far as I can tell, He's got that phone practically attached to his ear, talking to colleagues, saying, bring us your best ideas. We've tried in the Senate Finance Committee, just as Chairman Inouye has done in the Appropriations Committee, to start incorporating good ideas, whether they come from the Republican side of the aisle or the Democratic side of the aisle. I think we can improve on this bill more. But because it rewards success, it rewards enterprise, because there are already good ideas that both parties support, I would urge colleagues to use this week, working with our chairs, working with the Obama administration, to come together, because my view is, as I articulated, the public does want a path out of these terrible economic times. We have a chance to make it clear this isn't a bailout, it isn't a handout, but it is a path out, and I hope our colleagues will use this week, under the leadership of the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Chairman Baucus, the chairman of Finance, and the ranking minority members, to make sure that by the end of this week we have shown the American people that this critically important legislation on recovery and investment is moving forward to deal with the critical needs of those we represent at home. Madam President, I yield the floor.